John Kennedy. John, thank you so much for coming in.
Oh, thanks for having me, Fred.
I know you're busy, so you got a break from Congress. So
yeah.
We wanted to talk to you about several issues. The first one I want to talk to you about is this bill that you're pushing called the Affordable Insulin Now Act. Mm-hmm. Just by the name, we kind of know what it's promising to do, but give us a little more detail about it.
Well, I've sponsored the bill with Senator Raphael from Georgia. It would cap the price of insulin for everybody, whether you have insurance or not, whether you're on Medicare, Medicaid, whatever. It would cap the price of insulin at $35 a month. Insulin, if I had to pick one prescription drug that is a necessity, particularly in Louisiana, given our rate of obesity and diabetes, I would pick insulin. Now, it hasn't passed. I've got to put together the votes. We've got to figure out a way to pay for it. We're negotiating the cost, but it'll cost several $1 billion over 10 years. And I'm not going to just go borrow the money to pay for it. We're going to have to find the money within the budget, but it'll help a lot of people.
Do you feel like you're getting support, bipartisan support?
Yes, there's always a fight over who gets the credit for it. There are a couple of other insulin bills. I've met with my colleagues who also have insulin bills, and I've told them, look, I don't care who gets the credit. Let's just go past something, but let's pay for it. We don't want to just add to our debt. So we're working our way through that. And then, of course, Senator Schumer is the Democratic majority leader. He controls the Senate floor, so we've got to get him comfortable, but we're getting there.
Well, we know inflation is going to be a big talker, especially with the upcoming election. What's Congress doing? Is there any legislation that Congress is considering to address inflation?
Congress isn't doing enough. Okay. It's just very simple. It's gutting Louisianians like a fish. The average Louisiana family is spending $740 a month, not a year, a month more, because of inflation. The Federal Reserve is raising interest rates, but that alone is not going to get control of inflation. Congress has just got to stop spending so much money. And in order to do that, I've got to get my Democratic friends on board, which means I've got to get President Biden on board. And President Biden's favorite form of spending is more. If it were up to him, he just thinks it doesn't matter. If it were up to him, he'd take a reverse mortgage on Alaska and spend the money. But when you add that much monetary supply to the economy, it has a huge impact on inflation.
Do you think it's going to be a big issue in the upcoming election?
Oh, yes. I mean, I've been surprised at how little the Biden administration has done. They're relying almost completely on the Federal Reserve, and you can go back 50, 75 years. We've never had gotten control of inflation without attacking it by both Congress and the Federal Reserve.
All right, let's switch gears again. I want to talk to you about an op-ed that you recently wrote in the Ouachita Citizen. You wrote about crime.
Yep.
Crime is a big issue. We've seen a rise in crime here in Louisiana. Cities across Louisiana have seen it. We just saw in Shreveport the other day a mass shooting. Several people were killed. You believe there is a reason for the crime wave. What is it?
Well, it started with the defund the police movement, which is still out there. And it started with many of our political leaders saying that cops are a bigger problem than criminals. And it started with local politicians not backing up their police force. Mm-hmm. Now, cops make mistakes sometimes, but frankly, most cops will leave you alone unless you do illegal stuff. But it's just a fact of life. I wish it weren't, but there's some people out there, Fred, they're not sick or mixed up. They're just antisocial. And you have to separate them from society because otherwise they hurt people or they take people's stuff. And that's been the case since humans first walked the face of the earth.
Right. You say they have to be separated from society. That means go to jail. In fact, one of your quotes is, you don't have to be Einstein's cousin to understand what is driving this crime wave. Anti-cop rhetoric, soft on crime policies, and the idea that criminal justice is usually unjust. So you mentioned soft on crime policies, and I'm guessing you're pointing the finger at prosecutors.
Some prosecutors, some mayors, some governors. Look, many of my Democratic colleagues, not all of them, but many of them say, look, Kennedy, you don't understand. These folks aren't bad, they're just sick. I don't know whether that's true or not, but I know this, whether they're bad or whether they're sick, they're hurting other people and they're stealing other people's stuff. And they can't be part of society if they're going to do that. So while we're debating whether they're bad or sick or mixed up or whatever, you've got to separate them from society. It's always been like that. If I make it to heaven, I'm going to ask why it is, but it always will be like that. But that is broken down, particularly among some of my Democratic colleagues. They just say, well, you can't punish these people because they can't help it. Well, whether they can help it or not, when they're hurting other people, you've got to separate them from society.
All right. Senator Kennedy, that's all the time we have.
Always a pleasure, Fred.
Yeah, good to see you, sir.
You too.
All right, stay with us. We'll be right back.